Gopi Jana Valava Girivarada Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janarani Yashodanandana Braja Janarani Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Down with your father, with the after Bhagwan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 14, still the Forest of Enjoyment, text 41. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Rose, Sanskrit. So I'll just read this myself, and then we'll do the synonyms together. Karma balim avalam yatata apada gatanchin naraka vimuktaha punarapyahivam samsarahad ahani what ano naraloka artam upayati evam uparigato pi. Kindly repeat synonyms. Karma balim. the creeper of fruitive activities, avalambya, taking shelter of, tataha, from that, apadaha, dangerous of miserable condition, or katanchit, somehow or other, narakat, from the hellish condition of life, vimukta, being freed, punapi, again, evam, in this way, samsara dhabani, on the path of material existence, vartamana, existing, naraloka sha'artam, the field of self-interested material activities. Upayati, he enters. Evam, thus. Upari, above, in the higher planetary systems. Kata api, ulo, promoted. So I apologize, I'm not reading from the Prabhupada Lilamrita this morning because this is not on the right page and I don't know what page we're in. It's not in the, unless someone can find it. Is it necessary? Sorry? 890. Okay, well, before I read the Bhagavatam, let me read a tiny bit of this. Okay, Srila Prabhupada had so many centers in the US that to visit each one was not practical. During his year in India, many new centers had opened on the West Coast in Florida, Texas, the Midwest, the East. Prabhupada said he had more establishments than a wealthy businessman and more residences. Were he to stay at each of his houses he equipped, he couldn't visit them all in a year, and especially to Indian audiences, he would cite the monthly expenditures for his centers. So proud of ISKCON's growth, Prabhupada was never proud on his own account. He never considered using ISKCON for his own enjoyment. Whenever he visited a center, his quarters were usually in an apartment arranged at the last minute, often fraught with annoyances like noisy neighbors and incompetent cooks. At 75 years, his constant traveling was hardly an arrangement for his health and comfort. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, back to the Bhagavatam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: when the conditioned soul accepts the shelter of the creeper or fruit of activity, he may be elevated by his pious activities to higher planetary systems and thus gain liberation from hellish conditions. But unfortunately, he cannot remain there. After reaping the results of his pious activities, he has to return to the lower planetary systems. In this way, he perpetually goes up and down. Purport: in this regard, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Brahmanda Bamite Kona Bhagavana Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasadi Poe Bhakti Lata Bij, BC Madhya 19, 151. Even if one wanders for many millions of years from the time of creation until the time of annihilation, one cannot get free from the path of material existence unless one receives shelter at the lotus feet of a pure devotee. As a monkey takes shelter of the branch of a banyan tree and thinks he is enjoying the conditioned soul, not knowing the real interest of its life, takes shelter of the path of karma, kanda, fruitive activities. Sometimes he is elevated to the heavenly planets by such activities, and sometimes he again descends to earth. This is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Brahmanda Bhamit. However, if by Krishna's grace one is fortunate enough to come under the shelter of the Guru, the mercy of Krishna, he receives lessons how to execute devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In this way, he receives a clue of how to get out of this continuous struggle up and down within the material world. Therefore, the Vedic injunction is that one should approach a spiritual master. The Vedas declare, Tat Vignartham Sagurum Eva Vigichit, Mundaka Upanishad 1.2.12. Similarly, in the Bhagavad Gita 4.34, the Supreme Personality of Godhead advises, Tatpini Panipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadakshate Jnanam Jnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.3.21 gives similar advice. Tashmat gurum prapadyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam shabde pareja nishnatam brahmanyupashamashrayam. Any person who seriously desires to achieve real happiness must seek out a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. The qualification of his spiritual master is that he must have realized the conclusion of the scriptures by deliberation and be able to convince others of these conclusions. Such great personalities who have taken shelter of the Supreme Godhead, leaving aside all material considerations, are to be understood as bona fide spiritual masters. Similarly, Vishwanath Chakravarti, a great Vaishnava, also advises, Yasya prasada bhagavat prasada. With the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the mercy of Krishna. This is the same advice given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Guru Krishna prasadi poi bhakti lata bija. This is essential. One must come to Krishna consciousness, and therefore one must take shelter of a pure devotee. Thus, one can become free from the clutches of matter. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Adhyana Timarandasya Janan Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. When the conditioned soul accepts the shelter of the creeper or fruit of activity, he may be elevated to his pious activities to higher planetary systems and thus gain liberation from hellish conditions. But unfortunately, he cannot remain there. After reaping the results of his pious activities, he has to return to the lower planetary systems. In this way, he perpetually goes up and comes down. So we're nearing the end of this chapter, Forest of Enjoyment, and it's describing to us the materialistic reality of the conditioned soul's experience in this material world. Back in Vedic times, there was a proper means by which one can enjoy in this material world. Enjoyment is a reality in this existence. Anandamaya Vyasat. We are all pleasure-seeking by nature, so we want to enjoy, and Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and we have that propensity to want to enjoy. So that's a natural thing for the living entity. And there's a prescribed method by which one experiences the best kind of material enjoyment. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we have no clue of what that is. It's explained throughout the Shastras. This is the whole system of the karma kanda sacrifice, these big yagyas that they perform in Vedic times. You perform sacrifices, some punya, so you can go to the Swarga planets, Swarga Loka, and beyond. That is the real standard of enjoyment. There's a proper system, proper ritualistic process by which one can afford. And if you want to enjoy in the material world, you don't want to stick around in the middle planetary systems. This isn't a place for enjoyment. You've got to go to Swarga. There you will see the descriptions of the gods with their playboy features, both men and women, living millions of years with the sensual alacrity like that of hundreds and thousands of elephants. They can enjoy unlimitedly for a long time. That is the real standard of enjoyment. And there's a proper means in which we can attain that. If people really want that, if that's what you want in the material world, is that what you want with your life, then that's what you do. And that's what they did in Vedic times, these karma kanda sacrifices. Of course, in this day and age, our conception of enjoyment, what is it? It's breaking the four regulated principles. That's the standard in Kali Yuga. Illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, gambling. That's the standard of our enjoyment, at least. Not us, but maybe in the past. But generally speaking, in this day and age, this is the standard of enjoyment. And people are very proud about it. They'll give some kind of bogus philosophy. You got to enjoy the moment. This is what we hear all the time when we're preaching to people. It's all about being in the present. You've got to enjoy what you've got now, which is nothing very extraordinary or very sophisticated, because it's just animal philosophy. The best experts at enjoying material life are those other species in existence apart from the human beings, because they have no neurosis about getting into eating. They just eat. They just sleep anywhere. They just have illicit, well, they have sex. I mean, they procreate anywhere and everywhere, anytime, any moment. But it's only the human beings that have a whole neurotic experience about these things, and boast that they're having a good time. See, in material life, engaged in these sinful activities, which is by all means not human civilization and not the real human experience of happiness, is bringing people down to a level of consciousness that of just dogs and hogs. As Srila Prabhupada points, and throughout the Bible time, it's pointed out. So you're living in a dog, hog, cat civilization, and people are very proud of it, and they're not even very, they won't admit it readily. There's always this idea of, I'm enjoying, this is what sense gratification does. It imbibes this sense of pride, like, I know what I'm doing. Even though it doesn't matter how ridiculous the form of sense gratification is, or the object of sense gratification, it's good, it's flash, it's not bad, even it's completely ridiculous. Like sometimes, well, oftentimes when I'm doing book distribution in these malls, these young men would be hanging out outside the women's shops, like lingerie shops. They can't go in those shops because it's embarrassing for them. So you talk to them outside these shops. And it's the same thing all the time. It's like, so what are you doing out here? Well, I'm just waiting for my, for my partner. She's in there. I'm out here. I don't want to go in there. They're kind of like embarrassed to go into these places. And they're always boasting, yeah, how fine this other person is. They're, although they may be as plain as a yogurt carton, yeah, they're fine. They're the best. They look really good. She's the best sense gratification, and vice versa. You'll see the ladies boasting about their attachments and so on and so forth. And they bring a false sense of pride. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I know how to enjoy life. I know how to have a good time. I know what love is. I know what happiness is. And because they're engaged in so much sinful activity, there's so many traumas that come with that. And they don't want to, they can, or they don't even know how to admit it. Who are they going to admit it to in the first place? In the fifth canto, or we are in the fifth canto of the Bible. Previously, in this chapter, I think there's a description of those people who want to take shelter of unauthorized individuals. It's like jumping into a river. You're burning in the heat of Kali Yuga, and you just want to take respite in some cool waters. So you jump in the river, but the river has no little water. So when you jump in a river with no little water, what happens? Have you tried that before? You break your bones. That's what is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, taking shelter of unauthorized individuals, unlike a proper spiritual master. This purport is talking about the significance of a proper spiritual master. But people just take advice out of these ridiculous things they see on YouTube, this and that and the other. Their own parents can't give them any real advice. So it's like jumping in a river with no little water. And they just make a mess of themselves. And furthermore, in this traumatic state, they're all very riled up and puffed up. Who am I going to admit that I'm a failure in material existence? That's a really hard thing to admit, isn't it? What do you mean I'm a failure in material existence? Whole materialistic society is all about the solidarity of encouraging each other and trying to inspire each other. Yeah, you had some good times, but I know I was a little, it had a bad repercussions, but you're gonna get it again, you're gonna do it again, and it's gonna be better than the next time, and on it goes. So it's like this is, people aren't being for real. How rare is it you meet someone that you're trying to preach to who are actually being for real? Devotees know how to be for real. Being for real involves two things. You've got to have humility, and you've got to be able to control your senses, because that initial humility, just to recognize that material exhaustion, Pama Kinshana Gochram, this assistant of first kind of Queen Kunti, explains that Krishna belongs to those who are materially exhausted. Are you materially exhausted? This is something I ask myself. Am I materially exhausted? You look at the people in materialistic life, it's exhausting actually just looking at them running around trying to fulfill those mind and senses demands. Have you seen people who are so much vigorous and enthusiastic to fulfill their material desires? It's exhausting. Look at them on the streets. It's actually really tiresome. My God, when do they get a break? They're not getting a break from the pushings of the mind and the pushings of the senses. The devotees, they can at least this initial humility, I'm a failure. Material existence is a failure. Are we readily able to admit that material existence is a failure? And it says, Brahmanda Brahmitek, Brahma Bhavana Loka, Puna Avartinarjuna, Mam Opekya Puna Janmana Vidyate. Krishna says, even if you attain the Swarga, what does he say? If you attain the highest planets, heavenly planets, it's still a place of repeated birth, death, old age, and disease. So you can say, yeah, I made it big in the material world and the middle planetary systems. I'm living in the North Shore of Auckland. I made it big, or I'm living in Ponsonby, or maybe I'm living in Hawaii or Florida, wherever we think heavenly is in this material world. But Krishna says, even if you do reach the Swargaloka, the heavenly planets, birth, death, old age, and disease. Now, do you actually care about this? I ask myself this. I'm just wondering what people are actually considering. Do you mind actually taking birth and death again and again and again, just for being in the heavenly situation? A lot of people may consider, yeah, I mind being a god, a demigod. It sounds pretty good. Like, what's all these video games, all these movies that people are attached to watching? There's all these fantasy movies of people with, who have mystic powers. They're all attached to this kind of heavenly sense enjoyment. Are we really concerned about taking another birth and dying again? Or do we not mind taking a heavenly situation? Maybe do we not mind having a demigod body? So irrespective of where we are in this material cosmos, Krishna says, you have to take birth again. That is the real disease. So it requires a little bit of humility and a little bit of sense control. And you've got to have a sense control. And devotees are endeavoring for sense control because, as Rupa Goswami explains in the Nectar of Instruction, Krishna consciousness is built on sense control. If you can't control your senses, it means that you're in the mode of passion. If you're in the mode of passion, you're very aggressive to fulfill your lusty, anchoring desires. That's the honest truth. And you see it out there. If you're in the mode of passion, it's just me and my program. Srila Prabhupada explains in the first canto, there's two kinds of selfishness, self-centered and self-extended. Me and my immediate sense gratification and my extended sense gratification. So you can't be humble with uncontrolled senses. Controlled senses means you're endeavoring for the mode of goodness, actually. So devotees are really the only kind of people, for those people who are trying to be Krishna conscious, they're actually being for real because they can understand the futility of this going up and down, up and down, up and down, that we're hearing from this verse and translation. you see the whole futility of the endeavor and the hard work that comes along with it. It's hard just to get a nice heavenly situation in this material world. What to speak of getting to the heavenly planets? That's hard work. But for what? Therefore, essentially what Bhagavatam is pointing out, that for the fruit of workers, ultimately it results in fruitless labor. Fruit of work results in fruitless labor. Why? Because you've got to come back down again and again and again and again until you figure it out. This is not my program. I'm meant for a different program, right? So the whole karma kanda sacrifices in Vedic times is so that you can, access real sense enjoyment in the heavenly planets, but with the hope of understanding that one day this is actually recognizing that this is futile, right? And then if you one day when you do recognize this is futile, you become like a Gyani. So you philosophically speculate, oh, actually, maybe this isn't the best thing to do with my human form of life. Maybe this sense gratification business is a little bit dubious. It's getting me into so much trouble, so much frustration, insecurity, instability. So therefore, one becomes philosophical. So then one becomes a Gyani. You start understanding, oh, maybe am I the body? What is the difference between reality? What is the difference between illusion? What is the goal of life? It's got to be something more than this. So this is the Gyani. You progress from karma kanda, to Gyan. And as Krishna points out in the Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Janmanam Bante Jnanavan Man Papadyate Vasudeva Savat Iti Sa Mahatma Sudulabha. After many, many, many births of going up and down, up and down, up and down in this material universe, one who is actually a Gyani, one who is a knowledge, Mahatma Sudulabha, he's a great soul. He engages in my devotional service. So it takes many, many lifetimes to come to this philosophical disposition, this understanding that material existence is futile. So congratulations, everyone sitting here, everyone trying to be a devotee who's trying to understand these things. It's been, as Krishna says, Bhunam Janmanamante. It's taken you many births to come to this point. Anyone chanting Hare Krishna, your material sojourn in this existence is coming to a near end. So this is the system. So you get into karma, then you get into Gyan. And for those who are yogis, they want to maybe get mystic powers or meditate in the super soul within. Krishna also says you can become a yogi, but what does he say? Yoginam api sarvesham matgatena atmana shadavan bhajate yomam same yukmataha. Of all yogis, one who has great faith in me, who thinks of me within himself, and always renders devotional service, he is constantly united with me. He is the greatest. He is the best, topmost yogi. So the bhakta, the devotee, he or she is not meant to get into this whole system of karmic bondage, karmic attachment. He or she is just fully engaged in using their energies in serving the master of the senses, Rishikesh. Srila Prabhupada had a conversation in the Science of Self-Realization. I'm reading with one devotee. He says, these fruits of workers, they're compared to asses. They're like, the four kinds of people that don't come to Krishna consciousness in the Bhagavad Gita. They're called mudha, or asses, because they work so hard for mammon. They're trying to endure with the sweat of their brow, Srila Prabhupada explains, and working so hard simply to get a little grass like an ass. The ass, he's being exploited by the master. He's giving so much burden, but so much weight. And then the master exploits him by getting to him to do the hard work. And at the end of the hard work, the ass just simply gets a little bundle of grass. Like this. But the ass doesn't know that he or she can eat grass anywhere. He doesn't have to work hard. Happiness is an external affair. It's an internal journey. So there's this conversation. Prabhupada says, all these people, they're working so hard, but simply, what is the use of their hard work? Simply they enjoy their 2 pieces of toast and 1 coffee. That's it. And they don't even see that they're suffering so hard. And this is the benediction of Maya. The hard work is covered over by the illusory potency of the Supreme Personality. But you think you're enjoying. You actually think you're enjoying. And we hear that example in the Bhagavatam, how even Indra, who is the topmost enjoyer in this universe, like his level of sense enjoyment is beyond our conception. He was cursed to take the body of a hog. And what do hogs do? They just eat stool and make piglets. And he was attached to that enjoyment. Due to Krishna's potency, he didn't even want to take his Indra body, the position of Indra. He loved it. He was wallowing in the hog life. So this is the potency of the illusory energy. It's actually the benediction of Maya that you can't see your own self suffering. It's only the devotees who can see the reality of the situation. And in order to see the reality of the situation, you've got to be humble and you've got to have sense control. That's what it takes to be for real. Are we prepared to pay the price of being for real? A lot of people can't pay the price of being for real. They want, just leave me alone in my hog life, dog life, cat life. I'm just happy being in this circumstance, situation. And they can't see. For the devotees who can see, that is the greatest, it's a great mercy. Tesham evanakam partham kana. Krishna says, I dwelling in the heart of the devotee, lamp gives us the knowledge to see all these things. So when one actually sees these things, then one doesn't engage in them because they're totally antithetic to what is real happiness. The devotees know what is real happiness because they understand what is reality. So in order to do this, one needs to approach Brahmanda Brahmita Bhakona Bhagavana Jeev Guru Krishna Prasada Bhakti Lata Bij. After many, many hundreds and millions of births in this material world, we're going up and down. Brahmanda Brahmita Bhakona Bhagavana. We meet that person who actually sees. We have the good fortune to meet someone who sells us a book on the street, someone who tells us about Krishna, someone who gives us some prasadam and maybe tells us about Krishna. That is incredible fortune. We have to see things from the eyes of the Bhagavatam. Fortune doesn't mean winning the lotto. Fortune does not mean getting a big house by the sea and a big car and a big bank balance. That's not fortune. Means you meet you can meet someone tashmat gurum papadit jigyasu she uttamam, meeting someone who can actually tell you what is the real fortune, and which is Krishna consciousness. And I remember meeting my own spiritual master for the first time, and I couldn't figure out what this guy had because I knew his background. He came from a very materially affluent, prestigious family and went to a very affluent school. And for him, he could have had everything in terms of material enjoyment. But at 22 years old, he willingly chose to give it all up. So in my little 19-year-old intelligence, I was trying to add one and one together. How that doesn't make any sense. You graduated from one of the most prestigious universities in the world. You could have had access to any kind of material pleasure, but you chose to give it up and live life like a monk. So there was something that this individual had that others weren't getting access to. And I was curious, what is this that you've got that no one has? That obviously that you're tasting. So this is what happens when we meet great souls. It brings about these questions in life because their life, their precept is so antithetic to how we're taught how to live our lives in material existence. So the real fortune is to meet such a great person by which they can tell us what is the greatest thing. Develop our Krishna consciousness, connect back to Krishna, engage in devotional service. These are the greatest fortunes in life. So we're hearing, and this purport, actually Srila Prabhupada gives so much emphasis. Anyone who is seriously desiring to achieve real happiness must seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. The qualification of the spiritual master is that he must realize the conclusion of the scriptures by deliberation and be able to convince others of these conclusions. So this is a very rare encounter in the material world. How many people? Krishna already says, Bhaunam Janmanam Ante, many people. After many millions of births, someone may become a Gyani. What to speak of meeting a pure devotee of Krishna? So this is our wonderful fortune. We can also make others fortunate. Srila Prabhupada says we've come through so many births and deaths in material existence, and we finally meet a great personality as our own spiritual master, or perhaps Srila Prabhupada. These books have been distributed far and wide, and there's millions and millions of Srila Prabhupada's books have been distributed throughout the world, and they can have access to Srila Prabhupada's purports anywhere and everywhere and anytime. What great fortune is that? So this teaching, this chapter is teaching us the materialistic reality of life. We've already been in there, we've done this, we've been there, we've done that. Many people say like this, we've been there, we've done that, and we're going to come back and we're going to do it again until we become fortunate, until we meet a great soul. And so one therefore has to become detached. How do we become detached from all this? The spiritual master is very much busily engaging the disciple in devotional service. And by the engagement of devotional service, one develops simultaneously detachment and knowledge. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janati Yashubhaya Ragyam Jnana Chayat Aitukam. By engaging in devotional service, one develops knowledge, jnana, and vairagya. To the extent that one is absorbed in devotional service, intense devotional service in Krishna consciousness, naturally, I don't know if you've noticed, why am I doing all this? Who am I doing all this for? Who is this Krishna anyway? What is this Krishna? I need more knowledge, more about Krishna. Positive alternative. What am I being attached to? Therefore, by executing devotional service immediately, you want to gain knowledge of the spiritual world. And as our jnana and vairagya increase, then naturally we become detached from all these things that don't foster Krishna consciousness. In fact, this was Lord Chaitanya's mission. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartham Eka Purusha Purana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching us Vairagya, renunciation out of all things that don't foster Krishna consciousness. He wants to teach us transcendental knowledge of the spiritual world, and Bhakti Yoga, devotional service unto himself. One must develop renunciation. Irrespective of whether you're wearing saffron or whether you're in the renounced ashram or not, renunciation is a very real principle for every devotee's lives. Whether we realize it now or later, at some point, you have to realize that we have to renounce this material enjoyment, irrespective of any ashram we're in. We were just discussing this actually last week in Wellington, in the disappearance day of Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, because Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj is very famous for his very stoic and very staunch renunciation. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, he was known to stay in latrines. Latrine is a place where people, refute, go to the bathroom. He would stay in these places so to not see the face of materialists. Sounds pretty intense, doesn't it? This is one of our acharyas. What's this? Babaji Maharaj was so staunch. He had so many people that came up to him. They were rich, aristocratic businessmen, wealthy people. They want to take initiation from Babaji Maharaj. He would just look at them and just reject them, because he see that they were not sincere. He was totally against the external facade of the pomp of so-called spiritual life without the internal transformation. He was fully into the internal transformation, emphasizing the internal transformation of Krishna consciousness. He once said against the Sahajas at that time, remembering his quote there, yes, one can imitate the sounds of labor and not conceive a child. Similarly, by imitating the sounds of bhava, one can give birth to prema bhakti. So there are so many imitators out there, and back then in India, and maybe still now even in India, there's so many sahajits, people who take Krishna consciousness very seriously, but not very seriously, or very cheaply. And they roll around, make a big scene, emotional scene about Krishna, they love Krishna and this and that, the other, but at the same time, they're smoking marijuana, engaging in so many illicit affairs. So Babaji Maharaj was vehemently staunch against this. He didn't want to see a insincere soul. And this was very common, actually, previous to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he made sannyas he resurfaced the whole order of sannyas for the sake of preaching. But prior to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, actually, it was very common that devotees and Vaishnavas would take Babaji initiation. Like if you were back in the 1600s, you want to be a renunciant, you take Babaji. That was just common. It was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that made sannyas a popular thing for the sake of preaching. So Jagannath Das Babaji, of course, he taught us the example of, he was preaching through his example by his precept. When he met Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 1880, he actually told Bhaktivinoda Thakur to go and preach, somewhere or other find a way to preach this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gave so many books to make that foundation. To Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he preached Krishna consciousness all over India. And to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came Srila Prabhupada, who preached Krishna consciousness all over the world. So you can see the progression. So through Jagannath Das Babaji, he was preaching the importance of this very staunch renunciation. Yeah. And it may appear very bleak, and well, for a lot of people, they can't live like that. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur took Babaji at the last stage of his life, well, not formally took Babaji initiation. He actually engaged in like a Babaji lifestyle, took the dress of a Babaji. And all they're engaged in is chanting 192. It was common for Jagannath Das Babaji to actually just chant and 3 days in a row, just fasting the whole time, chanting 192 rounds, thousands of times, 16, how many thousands of names is that? Like Haridas Thakur. It was common. For Chaturmasya, the first month, all he would eat is just 4 bananas. And then, and then the next month, it's just guavas. And then the next, it's just whey. And then in the last, he was just eating boiled banana leaves without salt. So we preached like that at the loft or Bhakti Lounge. It wouldn't be very enticing for most people, but he was preaching the importance of renunciation. And this principle of renunciation is relevant to every devotee's lives. At some point in our lives, we've got to give up this body. So simultaneously, he was the real deal. I always appreciate Jagannath Das Babaji because as a renunciant, although he was apparently externally very stoic and very staunch, he was very soft, very kind and very gentle and soft-hearted, which is the real byproduct of proper renunciation. There was once a story of Jagannath Das Babaji. He would get so many donations from people. He had one servant, I think Bihari Das, and he would collect the donations. And at some point, he was secretly hiding some of the donation money from Babaji Maharaj because he wanted to buy something special for Babaji Maharaj. But somehow or other, Babaji Maharaj understood, you're withholding money. So he said to his disciple, tell me exactly how much donation we got, and all that money should go into buying laddus. Was it for him? No, it wasn't for him. He used all that money to buy laddus and feed all the cows in Vrindavan. That's what the money's going to. And this way, it was so kind to all living entities, actually. There was another instance with him, and he was in Navadvip by the Ganga, because he would spend 6 months in Vrindavan and 6 months in Navadvip. And when he was in Navadvip, he had a little cottage by the Ganga. And at one point, after eating his prasadam off his plate, all these dogs would come and start licking the prasadam of Babaji Maharaj's plate. They'd be licking his remnants. And so immediately when Bihari Prabhu saw this, what is this? We have to get rid of these dogs. We're shooing the dogs away with such alacrity. Get out of here. You see when you see dogs in India, most of you have been in India, there's just dogs everywhere. They look horrible, Some of them are like not kept at all. So these dogs that were licking on Maharaj's plate, shooing them away. Get away, get away, get away. Can you imagine your own spiritual master? You get him the plate, you feed him lunch, prasad, and you get the same plate and you give it to the neighbor dog, give it to the dog to lick. It's not what you'd normally do with your spiritual master's plate. You don't use the spiritual master's plate to feed animals. So naturally, Bihari Prabhu was taken aback by this. What is this? Get rid of these dogs out of this guy licking Maharaj's plate. But what was Babaji Maharaj's response? He was saying, actually, if you're going to throw away my plate, I will not take lunch. I will not eat again, because these dogs, they're residents of the holy Dham. They're devotees. Let them eat. Let them eat. Give them prasadam. Let them eat from my plate. Who cares? These guys are Dham Basis. So this was Babaji Maharaj's mood. Actually very kind. Titikshava Kurunika Surida Sarvadehinam Ajata Satrava Shanta Sarva Sadhu Bhushana. He was replete. He was the genuine deal. He was decorated by all the qualities of a sadhu, titikshava, tolerant. You have to be tolerant to give Krishna consciousness to others, because if you're not tolerant of people, or these materialistic people, then karunika, how are you going to be compassionate to them? I guarantee you, if you're not tolerant with the people around you, there's no question of being compassionate, karunika, giving them Krishna bhakti. You'll just want to run away. I want to take a vacation to Hawaii or whatever. I want to get out of here. It takes huge amount of tolerance to preach Krishna consciousness, because not everyone wants to hear it. Most people don't care for it. You're trying to give medicine to someone that thinks that they're totally sane. It's insane, but that's the process for preaching. Don't think that you're going to get any appreciation or recognition. More than often, it's the opposite. So one has to be titikshava, then you can be karunika, then surida sarvadehinam. How can you become friendly to all living entities if you can't tolerate the things and the people around you? No question of being friendly. You just stiff upper lip, stoic. Ajatra satava shanta. They had no enemies. They're peaceful. They abide by religious principles. Sadhava sadhu bhushana. These are the genuine qualities of a sadhu. So Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, you can see by his lifestyle actually in many, many examples. He was 144 years old when he left this world. 144. He was so old that his eyebrows would go over his eyes. His body was emaciated and very frail, and that his disciple would, he would be kept in a basket actually, and his disciple Bihari Prabhu would carry him around in a basket. So old. But every time there was a kirtan, he would jump out of the basket and say, Gaurnitai, Haribo, Haribo. Every time it's like a 144-year-old gentleman just jumps out, leaps out of this basket and starts dancing in ecstasy. There's something very sweet about, when you see elderly people dance. Even a very old devotee, they kind of like swivel. They might have some arthritis or something like that. So you see them putting their hands up and they're dancing in front of Gaurita or Shishirada Giridhara. There's something very sweet about old people dancing, But this guy, he's not an ordinary old gentleman, He's like resident of the spiritual world. Advaita Acharya as well, he's described as quite old, like he's an old body. and he would dance very very exquisitely for Lord Chaitanya. So this 144-year-old Vaishnava in a basket, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had this premonition, he had this vision, because back then there was a bit of a controversy of where Lord Chaitanya's birth site was. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a vision. He saw this massive light coming out of one area of Mayapur, and he had this vision that actually this was Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. But in order to get it confirmed, they needed someone like Jagannath Das Babaji to confirm that this was actually the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. And we can go there now in Mayapur in Yoga Pit. Jagannath Das Babaji was taken to this place, and immediately when he was brought to this sacred space, he could sense that, yes, this was Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. There was tulsi plants growing everywhere, and they could hear, he could envision the spiritual world there. And immediately when Jagannath Das Babaji came to this space, he just, again, he leapt out of his basket. Gauranga, Gauranga, Nityananda. 144-year-old gentleman. And he was dancing up and down, Haribo, Haribo. This is the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. This is the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. So this is another very significant thing for us to learn about Jagannath Das Babaji, was because it was actually because of him that we can go visit Yoga Pit in Mayapur. He confirmed the birth site of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So these two things, we were talking about the importance of renunciation. And we can't develop renunciation or detachment separate, like all these qualities of the demigods, Sasti Bhakti Bhagavati Akinchana, separate from devotional service. We're engaging in unalloyed devotional service. All the qualities of the demigods, of course, renunciation will be there, detachment will be there from this material world. That's what Mahaprabhu has taught us. Vairagya Vidyanija Bhakti Yoga. Detachment will be there. And we can become genuine devotees of the Lord. Genuine means we have qualification. If you have qualification, it means you have qualities. What are your qualities? That will say your qualification. Of course, anyone chanting 16 rounds and following the 4 regulative principles, they're definitely genuine devotees. There's no doubt about that. But we can always be more genuine. And the path of Krishna consciousness is becoming for real. Devotees are the only persons who are actually being for real. Otherwise, everyone else is just living life like a facade. They don't want to recognize the reality of the material situation, as we were discussing. Are we happy? Do we care? Brahma bhavana loka puna bhatinarjuna mamupete tukunte punar janmana vidyate. Do you mind taking birth again and again and again for heavenly sense pleasure? But no, the Vaishnavas readily admit, I'm a failure of material existence. Can you admit, I failed material existence? It's actually, it can be provocative, you know. Well, I've got a job, I've got a family, I've got bank balance, I've got... What do you mean I'm a failure? A failure in the sense that birth, death, old age, disease, you'll have to take another birth. There's no such thing as material progress, even if you go to this heavenly planets. In one sense, yeah, you get more sense gratification, more sense progress in that sense, but you have to take another birth. That's the point Krishna is trying to get in our heads in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, material life is futile. What do you mean? There's no such thing as material advancement. It just creates more problems. Haven't you noticed? I think we'll talk about this at the loft this evening. Material progress means just more material problems. There's no question of material advancement. But one has to have the humility to admit that. And it's hard. It's hard for people, especially if they have a lot of material affluence. I can see that. But we were in Cambridge yesterday doing some book distribution. And there's so much opulence there. We talked to Srinivas Prabhu in Hamilton. He was saying, yeah, this is the most wealthiest district in the Waikato, the Cambridge area. People are just so much money. And in that wealth, and by the way, Srila Prabhupada explains in the first canto that of all the opulences, wealth is the most bewildering. It's the most difficult to be because it represents Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is an expansion of Srimati Radharani, and we want to enjoy Krishna separate from Lakshmi. Sorry, we want to enjoy Lakshmi separate from Krishna, like Ravana wants to enjoy Sita separate from Ram. And that's our program in the material world. So this wealth is so bewildering. And I was just observing these people are just had high fever, as Srila Prabhupada explains in Ishupanishad. The fever is over 108, 9 degrees, the materialistic fever, and they're engaged in it even more intensely. So how will the fever come down? The fever will come down, as explained here by Srila Prabhupada, when we meet Kuguru Krishna Prasadi Bhakti Latabi. The fever comes down when we have the good fortune to meet a great soul who teaches us the positive alternative for a human form of life. So I'll stop here, and perhaps anyone would like to add any, or I can try and clarify anything that I've said, or perhaps ask a question.
Where was the charge based?
There's very little much about Jagannath Babaji's life, actually, that we hear from my knowledge. All I know is that he spent 6 months of the year in Navadvip and 6 months of the year in Vrindavan. How he came around this world, actually, I don't know. I didn't have time to research. And then, but I don't know where or how he appeared into this world. The details, sorry. There wasn't much of a detailed person, but he met Jagannath Das Babaji in 1880, and at that meeting created resonant connection. They were on the same level of bhakti, and they hit it off really well. Bhakti Vinod Thakur was he was taking shiksha from Jagannath Das Babaji. He was a shiksha guru. Sorry, that's important to you. You can do some research. Maybe someone else knows where did Bhakti Vinod appear? I'm assuming he appeared in that part of India. Calcutta. Yeah.
Yes, Hare Krishna. There was a question actually online yesterday, but before she could completely get it answered, the class had finished. So the question was Prahlad Maharaj. He was born in a family of demons, and he was surrounded by demons. How was he able to become a pure devotee?
Well, number one, Prahlad Maharaj is not an ordinary person. And number two, he got the association of Buddha. That's the key point there. And number three, it's Lord Shinda's pastime. So these three things. But significantly, because of the association of Narada Muni, although he was in the womb of his mother, Narada Muni was preaching to him. Haribol. And Hare Krishna. So he had that great fortune, And such a great soul was Prahlad Maharaj, who appeared in this and became a preacher of Krishna consciousness. The Mahajans, he's the greatest, actually. That's example. Was that correct? I think, from my knowledge, that's the main thing, and it's also Lord Nishingadeva's pastime. So, without Prahlad Maharaj, is Nishingadeva going to come? He had to. In one sense, Prahlad Maharaj is more significant because without him, the Lord will not come out of the pillar. So again, another fine philosophical point, how the devotees actually play such a significant role in the Lord's pastime. I always like to glorify Prahlad Maharaj, Lord Nrsimhadev's appearance day. A very significant pivot for the Lord's appearance. Was there anything else? Hare Krishna. Say that again. Rationalist. You're talking about two different opposite scales here. You're talking about the hardcore materialist, and then there's the Paramahamsa pure devotee. They both want to come back. It's true. Very nice point. As Mahaprabhu explains, Janmani Janmanishware Bhavata Bhakti Haitati. Birth after birth after birth, let me just come back, but as long as I have your devotional service. That's a very high platform. That's the pure devotee platform. I can't say I'm on that, but I just want to get the hell out of here. It's like, I told my spiritual master, he knows, I just want to get the hell out of this material. Well, this place is full of misery, it's full of suffering. It's intelligent. He said this. It's intelligent, but it's not the highest. The devotee should be willing to take birth after birth after birth for your devotional service. So it's a completely antithetic state of consciousness. The other wants to take birth to serve Krishna because serving Krishna is the greatest. The other one takes birth because he's attached to suffering. That's the sorry state of material existence. But true, like the gopis, I'll end with this. Once the gopis, they were concerned with Krishna having a headache, thanks to Narada Muni. Krishna was getting a bit of a headache in Dwarka. He had to tend to so many material affairs. And so the remedy for the headache was what? It was the dust of the lotus feet of the topmost Vaishnavas. So Narada Muni was telling to the Dwarka Vasis, you have to give the dust of your feet to Krishna. That would be the only thing to solve his suffering. But the Dwarka, the Dwarka queens wouldn't give it because they knew if they put the dust on Krishna's feet, I'm going to go to hell. It's not right. It's not going to be this is not proper. We can't put the dust of our feet on Krishna's head. Of course, and then he went to the gopis of Braj. He asked the same thing, and what were the gopis of Braj? They were just with their buckets and their pans and their brooms, they were putting all the dust, giving it to Narada. Give it to Krishna, give it to Krishna. And then Narada Muni asked the gopis, what? Are you not concerned of going to Naraka by giving your dust to Krishna's and putting your dust on Krishna's head? And then what was the gopis' response? Let me go to hell. Doesn't matter. I will go to hell. But Krishna's headache, Krishna must be served. Krishna must be pleased. Krishna's happiness comes first. Krishna's pleasure must come first. Let me go to hell. So we're all aspiring for that state of consciousness. And it's not artificial. Like, we're not into being artificial. So therefore we take every means, every opportunity to embrace purification, austerity. Tapo divya putrakayena satvam shutyat yashmat brahmatokyam tvanantam. Tapo divya, we embrace the austerity that we have to embrace in this human form of life. Why? Because Brahma Sukya Twanantam. You will experience real joy from a purified existence, a purified heart. You cannot be happy without a purified heart. You have to have a purified existence. And the topmost devotees in Vrindavan teach us what is the standard of real happiness. It's inconceivable because for most of us, I just want to get out of here. The people that we have to deal with on a daily basis, the material world is wrought of kaler doshani diraj and astiheko mahadguna. Krishna says, Eva Krishna si mukta sangha paramjaya. This Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. Nothing good. Tell that to someone and there's just nothing good here. Only one good thing, Krishna's holy name, Mukta Sangha Paramjit, which will take us out of this material world. Yes, so thank you for bringing that up. Very good point. Yes, the topmost devotees, they want to take birth to serving Krishna again and again. So Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Nitai Gaur.